Shalom Aleichem, everyone. Good evening. Bruchim Abayim, and thank you for joining us and the opportunity to learn together on this holy night, on this Yom HaKadosh of Hoshana Rabbah, of asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to send us Yeshua's personal and communal, and most importantly, for all of Klal Yisrael. This year, as we approach Hoshana Rabbah and Shemini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, we are focusing, of course, on the upcoming first yahrzeit, the first anniversary of the terrible events of the cataclysmic destruction of last year of October 7th of Shemini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. And over the past year, we can reflect, especially those of us in Chutz La'aretz, on what we have done, how we have related to Achinu B'nai Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. So there is a comment of the Sefer Hasidim that expands on a well-known halachic principle. We are familiar with the idea of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh, that Jews are co-responsible for each other. And the original concept of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelazeh appears in the Gemara in a halachic legal context in which Jewish people are responsible to take care that everyone is observant. We are each observant of the mitzvos and responsible for each other, that we all observe the mitzvos. But the Sefer Chassidim, almost 1,000 years ago, instructs us that this is not just a legal principle. It says the Sefer Chassidim, Aval mipnei sheYisrael arevim zeh lezeh, because the Jewish people, we are co-guarantors to each other. Lekach kishetzar bo al echad, when one person suffers, chayavim kulam lehitztair ulehispalel. All of us are obligated to feel lehitztair, to be pained, and to daven. Over the past year, we have tried, and we have done, to a great extent, the tsar, the feeling to the extent possible of someone who's living far away, to feel the pain of brothers and sisters of Achinu B'nai Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, the pain of those who have lost Krovim v'Yedidim, their close relatives who fell either in battle or during the massacre of October 7th. We have tried to feel the tsar, the pain of those who have been displaced from their homes, from the north and from the south, the emotional turmoil. We have tried to feel the pain of those who have been injured in body and in spirit, those who have been hospitalized and affected. And of course, we continue to try to feel the pain of those families whose loved ones are hostage, and the hostages themselves, those who are in this world and those who have gone to the other world. We have tried to daven, lehispalel. How much tehillim have we said? How much heartfelt prayer have we offered to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And in addition to feeling and to davening, we've tried. The Medrash says in Shmos Rabbah, in Perek Aleph Siman Chav Zayin, Vayar b'sivlosam. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he grew up as a young man, he went out, Vayetze el Echav, he witnessed the challenges and the suffering of his brothers. Vayar b'sivlosam. He saw their burdens. Ma'u Vayar, asked the Medrash. Shahaya roeh b'sivlosam, he saw their suffering. Uboche, and he was crying. But not only was he crying, says the Medrash, V'haya nosein kseifav u'mesayea l'kol echad ve'echad. He would lean his shoulder over and share in their burden, literally share in their burden, to try to make their life just a little bit easier. Over the past year, so many of us in Chutz La'aretz have done whatever humanly possible for us from a distance to put our shoulder down, no sink seifenu l'sayea, to try to assist brothers and sisters in Israel. Whether that was assisting with emotional support by sending letters, whether it was visiting and being there in person, going to a shiva visit, or visiting an army base, or just spending money to support the economy, or whether it was sending gear, materials, resources. Think back, how many hundreds and thousands of tons of supplies have we sent, have we tried to put our shoulder down, u'misayea l'kol echad ve'echad? We want to continue to do that. The question is, at this moment, a year later, what now? Because we do not have, thank God, it doesn't seem that it's needed, to have a mass appeal, a drive for bulletproof vests or extra rations or barbecues. That need seems to have gone away. So yes, we can and must continue with our feeling of tsar and our davening, of course, and of course our hishtadlus, our political activism. But to a large extent, the asiya, the doing, has receded from the forefront. There aren't regular missions that are going on an ongoing basis. Now, maybe there should be. And the agriculture is still suffering, and the economy is still suffering. But the reality is, it's not exactly what it was. So the question is, so where does that leave us? So the first thing is to realize that all the things that we did, they were real and they were good. Moshe Rabbeinu, how much of a difference does it make? We don't know. But we do know that the Medrash wants us to know that it mattered to somebody, and it was important, and it was real in that moment. What we did over the past year to support Achinu B'nai Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael, it was not just taking a selfie with history. It was making a real difference on a human level, even if it was just one interaction with one person. But now we're at a different phase. And perhaps one way to think about a way forward in this next year, the second year, where for those of us who are not still experiencing the trauma directly, we want to think about what is it that we can still do. Perhaps that's exactly the Nakuda. It's about our thinking. There is a Tosefta in Maseches Peah, in the first parak, where the Tosefta says, Machshava tova HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa. When a person has a good thought, the Ribono Shel Olam, the master of the universe, mitzarfa, litzaref, it means he connects, he forges it. It becomes reality. And this is expanded upon in the Gemara Kiddushin on Daf Mem Amud Aleph. Machshava tova mitzarfa l'maisa. A good thought, a machshava tova, the Ribono Shel Olam fashions it and forges it as if it was an action. Shenemar, says the pasuk, Oz nidberu yirei Hashem ish el re'ehu. Then these people who feared God, they were nidberu, they were talking amongst each other. Vayakshev Hashem vayishma. And the Ribono Shel Olam listened. Vayikasev sefer zikaron lefanav. And he wrote it down as a memory before him. L'yirei Hashem, for those who fear the Ribono Shel Olam, u'lechoshvei shemo, and those who think of his name. Says the Gemara, my u'lechoshvei shemo, what does it mean, those who think of his name? Amar Ravasi taught, afilu chashav adam lasos mitzvah. If a person even conceived of the idea of doing a good action, of a mitzvah, venenas, and it was an onus, he was compelled to restrain himself for whatever reason. V'lo asa, says the Gemara, mala alav hakasav ki'ilu asa. The Gemara considers it as if we did it. So the first thing is to think, even if we're not sending material goods, to think of our brothers and sisters and imagine if we could or if we would, as if we were. And the Ribono Shel Olam says that's important too. So the first thing is to continue to be mindful of Achinu B'nai Yisrael. Imagine if we could fulfill the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim in our minds. Well, says the Gemara, in some extent we can. So maybe in our Shemona Esrei, when we get to Rifa'inu, we can imagine as if we are doing Bikur Cholim in the Tel HaShomer Rehab Center, sitting with a chayal who lost his leg, or a survivor from the Nova Festival who lost his hand, Rahman al-Islan. So we can connect and do the mitzvos bein adam lachavero to some extent, according to Chazal, at least klape shmaya, at least that's the way the Rebbe Shalom thinks of it, in our minds. That matters. But perhaps because we're thinking about Eretz Yisrael, it's even deeper. Because this Tosefta, this Gemara and Kiddushin, relate to all mitzvos, and that there's something important and beautiful and significant, spiritually significant, of thinking of doing a positive action. Gemara says in Ksubas that there is something unique when it comes to Israel, when it comes to Eretz Yisrael. The pasuk says in Tehillim, Perek Pei Zayin Pasuk Hey, Uletzion Yeyomer, to Tzion it will be said, Ish ve'ish yulad ba, a man and a man will be born in it. V'hu yechonaneha elyon, it will be established. Says the Gemara in Ksubas on Daf Ayin Hey. Amar Reb Meisha Berei to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Says Reb Meisha in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Echad hanolad ba, one who is born in the land of Israel, ve'echad hamitzape l'rosa, and one who is mitzape, tzipisa, who anticipates, who envisions in their mind's eye and seeks, waits, anticipates to be in Eretz Yisrael, ish ve'ish. And says the Yalkut Chadash that both of these are, in his words, shavim. Both the Jews who are born in Eretz Yisrael, the Eretz Yisrael Yidden who are inherently Israeli, but those who are mitzape l'rosa, who are seeking it, who are imagining, wishing, desiring, and hoping. Tzipisa liYeshua, tzipisa liEretz Yisrael. If you imagine and hope and think about Eretz Yisrael, then it's as if we're there. Now, obviously, this Gemara does not mean that we don't need to have serious conversations about moving to Eretz Yisrael, being in Eretz Yisrael, not as a vacation destination and not as a refuge from anti-Semitism, but because it is our land, the land of our people, the land of our destiny, and it's the Mokom Asher Yivchar, it's the Ribono Shel Olam's place where he wants us to be, to establish ultimately the Malchus Shakai, the national telos of our goal as a Jewish people. It's not just the conversations, though. It's even the thought. It's even the wish. The mitzape, the one who wishes they were in Eretz Yisrael. And why is that? How can it be that we're going to equate, on some level, those who are living in Eretz Yisrael, who are born there, and those of us who are still living in America, who are mitzape l'rosa? So this pshat is explained by none other than the Heilige Satmar Rav, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh L'Vracha. Reb Yoelish in the Divrei Yoel, the Heilige Satmar Rebbe, the Divrei Yoel in the Toldos commentary on Toldos, Parshas Toldos, asked this question. He says, what does it mean? How could it be possible that a person could say, because I'm mitzape l'rosa, I could be considered as one of the children of Israel, ki'ilu nolad ba? So says the Satmar Rebbe, the truth is, he says it's pashut in Svara. It's obvious, amazing. He says, of course, on a deeper level, in the context of that Gemara, of course, being in Eretz Yisrael is incomparable. But Le'inyan, he describes, of Zakusa, the Inyan of Zchus, both those who are in Eretz Yisrael and those in Chutz Aretz who are mitzape l'rosa, we're on the same level. Because he quotes a Ramban in Maseches Eruvin. Eruvin is about the concept of creating boundaries and spaces. So one type of Eruv is what we know more domicile that we share for the purpose of Shabbos and carrying. But there's another type of Eruv. It's called Eruv Tchumen, whereas a person is not allowed to exit the city limits and traverse a certain distance on Shabbos, even if they're not carrying anything. And one measure of Eruv Tchumen is what we refer to as 2,000 amos, which according to one opinion, according to Rabbi Akiva, is a biblical limit. Right? There are other different opinions, but according to Rabbi Akiva, Alpayim Amma of Tchum Shabbos is D'oraisa, you're no longer allowed to walk. However, there is an institution that if you place an Eruv, if you put, an Eruv generally means food, so for Eruv Chatzeros we use matzah, so if you were to put an Eruv, you were going to take bread and put this bread, the rabbi said you could put the bread at the edge of that circumference around the city, that area, and then you can go another 2,000 amos from there. And then you could put another little basket of bread, another loaf of bread, and then you can continue on from there and further and further. So the Ramban wonders, I don't understand. According to Rabbi Akiva, that 2,000 amos is a biblical perimeter. The fact that you put a loaf of bread down, how does that help anything? What does that mean? How can you extend your area? That's only a takana midrabanan. Eruvin was instituted by Shlomo HaMelech. The D'oraisa of 2,000 amos, that precedes that. That's a higher level. So says the Ramban, because when you put down the Eruv, what you are establishing is that in your mind, the place where the Eruv is located, that is your domicile. That is your resting place. That's your makom, that's your shvisa. And that works on a D'oraisa level. That's true also, the Gemara talks about ma'ariv baraglov, that if you imagine, if you can see and envision this particular location and that's going to be where your shvisa is, that's sufficient. Because on a D'oraisa level, it's not the bread that is allowing you to walk further and further. It's because by placing the bread there, that's where your mind settles. And where your mind settles, that's where you are. Says the Satmar Rebbe, if there is a place that your mind is to be there, that is your resting place. Uki'ilu husham befoal mamish. It is if you are there practically. And that works. It operates even on a level of a D'oraisa. According to Rabbi Akiva, that Tchumen, the perimeter is D'oraisa. So he says now it's Pashat. That both Hanolad be'eretz Yisrael ve'echad hamitzapa l'rosa zechu san shaveh. Their merit is the same whether you live there or you want to live there. You imagine that you're living there. If a person has really a desire and an interest and sees themselves as a person, a ben Eretz Yisrael, then it's nechshav mid'oraisa. It is considered from the Torah itself, ki'ilu hu sham before mamish. It is if the person is actually there. Exactly. And he uses that to explain the Gemara in Brachos that Chazal learned from the Psukim, that a person, when we daven, a person should imagine focusing their heart opposite the Kodesh toward the Beis HaMikdash, v'yispalalu elecha derech artzam, derech habayis hazeh. That it's the same concept, that if you imagine that you are standing before the Ribbono Shel Olam on the Har HaBayis when you're davening, even if you're in Chutz La'aretz, even if you're here in Skokie, Illinois, it's as if you are there. And this idea that where you think you are is where you really are is captured in one brief teaching of the holy Baal Shem HaKadosh. It's quoted in the Keser Shem Tov, where the Baal Shem Tov taught, Makom shehamachshava shel adam magas, a place where a person's mind reaches, sham hu kulo. And the Heilige told us, amplifies this in Parsha Shlach, And perhaps we can explain, as it relates to Eretz Yisrael in particular, that this is what Hashem was giving as a parting gift to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Baal Shem is saying that where your mind is, that's where you are. So maybe that's why when Moshe Rabbeinu was about to leave the world, what did the Rebbe Shalom say? Alei el har navo, go up to the top of this mountain, ure'ei es Eretz Canaan, and see Eretz Canaan. So some would ask, what kind of cruel joke is that? You're taunting Moshe Rabbeinu? You're telling him, go see the land, and you can't go there. But according to the Holy Baal Shem, according to this teaching of the Satmar Rebbe, that where a person's mind and a person's ratzon is, that's where they are. So Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin in the Resisei Laila in Osnan Beis says that when you look at something and you focus your attention on it, that becomes the destination of your mind. And therefore, that's where you are, because you are where your mind is. And so that's why we have to be so careful about where we look, because what we look at, that creates this connection to our essential self, because that's where we go, where we see draws our attention, and where our attention is, where our focus is, where our mind is, that's where we are. So maybe what the Rebbe Shalom was telling Moshe Rabbeinu was, look, for specific reasons that had to do with Mei Meriva and other things, you can't physically, corporeally go into Eretz Yisrael. But I'd like you to be able to see Eretz Yisrael, because when you see it, it will create that mental image for you. And when your mind will be there, then you also will have the opportunity to connect and be in Eretz Yisrael. So perhaps for us, even if we can't do practically for Eretz Yisrael on a day-to-day basis, and we can't go to Israel on a day-to-day basis, in addition to feeling, in addition to davening, we can also think. We can wish we were there. Obviously, we can wish we could help and do those mitzvos. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitzarefet l'maisa. But more than that, specifically when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, we can wish that we were there. We can imagine as if we were there. We could hope that even if we can't practically be there, we wish we could. And by doing that, we become just like those Bnei Eretz Yisrael. And by our machshava being there, so then according to exactly what the Baal Shem HaKadosh is teaching, that we're going to be there. And maybe by having our focus on being there, perhaps on some spiritual, metaphysical, neshama soul level, Jews who are there will feel less lonely. Maybe if we think about the hostages, Eisham, wherever they are, Rachman al-Islam, Rebbe Shalom should save them, maybe they'll be a little less alone if we're thinking about them on a regular basis. Maybe a bereaved mother will feel less lonely when she wakes up in the morning if there are Jews around the world who are thinking about her. And maybe there will be Chayalim who are fighting in the north who will feel a little less frightened because somehow they're going to feel that we're going to be with them. This pasuk of Ish ve'ish yulad ba is quoted by the Zohar HaKadosh. In Vayikra and Parshas Tzav, the Zohar HaKadosh says, Uletzion yeyamar ish ve'ish yulad ba chad ladina v'chad l'rachamei. There is Ish and there is Ish. There is a man and there is a man. There is the man of Din and there is the man of Rachamei. The Ribono Shel Olam has showed us, Ladavonenu, to our great sorrow, the face of Din, the personification of judgment over the past year. But we ask him now, Ish ve'ish. We are asking the Ribono Shel Olam, please show us the Ish of Rachamim. On this night of Hoshana Rabbah, looking for the Yeshua, the salvation, because as our tradition has, the Pitkin Yotzin, the Gemar was done on Yom Kippur, but it wasn't sent until now, until Hoshana Rabbah. So in the merit of our tfilos, of our tsar, of our doing, and of our thinking, the Ribono Shel Olam should send us a Yeshua, Besuros Tovos, Nechamos, and ultimately the Bias Gold Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Amen.